1980, the month is August, city of Chicago, South Side, 643 East 47th, near Cottage Grove to be exact, heartland of the Black Gangster Disciple Nation, before the GDs and BDs separated. The cops get a tip that something big has happened, and they raid the small warehouse at 643 East 47th. Inside are 91 members of the Black Gangster Disciples and a bunch of white gang members from the north side, the Simon City Royals. What was up with that? The founding black organization of the Folk Nation under Larry Hoover was meeting in secret with the largest white gang in the Folk Alliance. I could only find one record of this event, a newspaper article, and it said the meeting was about the GDs backing the Royals up on the street in exchange for a steady supply of guns from the Simon City Royals. Sounds like the plot of an alternate reality Batman limited series where Bruce Wayne is the Joker and Gotham City is the vast and organized gangland of Chicago, which is actually not too far from reality. Now, the alliance between the Simon City Royals and the BGDN was actually birthed 2 years before that meeting in 1978 at the Pontiac prison. That was the year 3 prison guards were eliminated by somebody amongst the inmate population. 18 black gang members, leaders of many different organizations, including at the time the alleged ringleader Larry Hoover, were put into the court system for the crimes, and they were called the Pontiac 18.
Two major alliances were drawn up. Jailed leaders of the major gangs in Chicago found that they could defend themselves more effectively if they allied themselves with other gangs. The two alliances became known as the People and the Folks. Although the new configuration made for some strange bedfellows, it wasn't long before most of Chicago's gangs had lined up behind one or the other association.
Now, the intense legal situation pulls these guys together, and after an amazing not guilty verdict, the Folk Nation is formed behind penitentiary walls to help bring control to the chaotic Illinois prison system. The People Nation, focused around Jeff Fort's Black P. Stone, is soon formed of the remaining organizations in opposition.
So what you think about the gangs, other gangs like the Bloods and the Crips now?
They ain't got nothing coming, man. They just been caught on to something, man, you know. And trying to be like the rest of the gang, but you know what's happening. All the brothers up here, we real. Them niggas, they just imitation, man.
By 1980, the Simon City Royals was one of the largest street organizations in Chicago. But then their new leader was to death by the Puerto Rican Stones in the Albany Park neighborhood, and this was right around the time and probably why they called the meeting with the BGDN to get street power in exchange for heaters. Simon City Royals are a white greaser gang that started in 1956 in West Humboldt Park, just north of Garfield Park, where our action takes place, though they had moved up mostly to the north side and linked with the group called Simon City. So they'd been the Royals on the west side that linked with Simon City in the 60s on the north side and became the Simon City Royals. Their early chief was a guy named Frank Fender, seen here in prison flying his G colors. Now, once upon a time, the white greaser gangs were very serious, often attacking black people that ventured, and Hispanics mostly, that ventured outside of their proper neighborhoods up through the early 80s. And now we arrive at the origin moment in our Batman story. But in our Gotham, there's no Wayne family leaving the opera, just a motley crew of white and Hispanic street kids on West Belmont Avenue on Chicago's north side, which had pretty serious crime problems back in 1993 when this happened. There was a dispute over an unpaid $40 debt and it led to a guy, I think it was 19 or 20, and there were 4 witnesses who all put the blame on 13-year-old Thaddeus T.J. Jimenez, who had recently been jumped into the Simon City Royals. He ends up getting tried, found guilty, sent to 40 years, or sentenced to over 40 years in prison. After juvenile, he gets transferred to the infamous Stateville prison when I think he was 18. The Simon City Royal leader for the whole prison system, though he wasn't in Stateville when TJ got there, was a guy named Brian Mousy Nelson. Nelson had come to prison for a long term in the early 80s. He was under Larry Hoover, of course, Larry Hoover had him write a book report, and he kind of mentored him a little bit, and he got close to Hoover, and he served on his personal security detail. Mousy had to break members' hands by racking their hands in the cell doors if they stole something. It was intense in there. And he carried 2 shanks, one for himself when he was on Hoover's security detail, one to hand to Mr. Hoover if needed. Now, T.J. Jimenez became a supervisor of a cell house for the Simon City Royals in Stateville. He got into his Catholic religion. He was smart enough that he learned Latin well enough to write letters to his priest in Latin. He had problems with guards, and he was eventually moved to Pontiac prison, where there was over 1,000 guys living in solitary confinement, and it was so cold in the winter, the ink in your pen would freeze solid.
Answer the question of whether or not those sentenced before 2012 can receive mandatory life sentences without parole for crimes that they committed as juveniles.
Paula, I know you were one of the few allowed in the court today. What happened?
So he settles in at Pontiac prison, and TJ writes to a psychology professor he hears about who had written this important article about prefrontal cortex development. So prefrontal cortex is the part of your brain responsible for impulse control. It doesn't fully develop in boys till about 25 or 26. And this science is the reason behind the resentencing of all the juvenile lifers some years back in 2005.
And that follows a trend that we've seen over the past decade of the court applying a more progressive approach to juvenile justice and recognizing that juvenile defendants are a different category than adult defendants.
So he ends up, that leads him to write to the Northwestern Center on Wrongful Convictions. Northwestern University is a premier university in Chicago, has a great law school, and students from the Blum Center on Wrongful Convictions decided to reinvestigate his conviction. The lawyers uncovered that an alternate suspect, Juan Carlos Torres, had been surreptitiously recorded confessing to the homicide by the father of one of the other kids that was there that day, but the police discounted the recording at the time. 2 key witnesses recanted their earlier statements that T.J. Jimenez had fired the fatal shots, and Thaddeus Jimenez was set free.
TJ's case attracted me because he was only 13 at the time that he was charged with the murder of a young man. He was among the youngest people ever tried as an adult.
And he knows some money's going to be coming to him eventually, because Chicago had been paying out and continues to pay out huge settlements because their police department frequently engages in, shall we say, egregious behavior.
Tonight, Chicago taxpayers are on the hook for $25 million to settle lawsuits against Chicago police.
The city has already spent more than $100 million after losing some lawsuits and settling others.
So, as the first big lawsuit is going to play out, TJ gets $200,000 statutory payout to tide him over. He starts adapting a free life. He gets a job. He has a couple kids. He's living with his mom. I think he was working at maybe a fast food place. He seems to be attempting to become a reasonably law-abiding citizen. But he says the Chicago police were harassing him, perhaps to goad him into doing something criminal to cause a judge or jury to award him less money. Sounds like a conspiracy theory, but check out this video. Now, that was a video that T.J. Jimenez himself recorded during this time where he's waiting to get his big settlement. The police said his neighbors called the police because he was gang-banging outside.
Getting a call saying there are a lot of people gang-banging and making a lot of noise. Your neighbors are complaining. What are you guys going to do about that? You going to continue this, or are we going to...
First of all, take it inside.
We're not the suspects.
Okay, this is the address we were called to, so take it inside.
This is my property right here.
Because people calling and complaining about the noise here. So
I thought it was gangbanging. You said gangbanging.
I said noise, so take it inside. And then your friend behind you decided to flip us off as we got out of the car, which is very disrespectful.
It is disrespectful. Hold on.
So like I said, this is the time when this huge lawsuit was being figured out, and TJ said he was being harassed, watched, stalked by the Chicago PD in the quest to discredit him. And it actually sounds like that might possibly be true, because listen to what happens next. His mom's apartment or house gets raided, and they go in TJ's room. And he does have some guns in there, but remember, at this point, he's not a felon. His conviction has been thrown out. So the guns aren't a charge, but what happened might have set him on the path to get this bitterness where instead of Bruce Wayne becoming Batman, he becomes the Joker, the gang lord. They find some magic mushrooms, which again are like damn near legal nowadays, and are known, psilocybin is known to help people with PTSD. They give them a case for the mushrooms because they can't give them a case for the guns. And he goes into the Cook County jail once again, but he's got to be bitter at this time, and I can't say that I blame him. Were they trying to put serious criminal charges on him to trade for a smaller settlement? I don't know, but as you can see, the hostility between Jimenez and the Chicago PD is palpable in these various videos TJ himself collected and posted on his own YouTube channel.
No questions, gentlemen, no questions.
Hi. What's up? Hi, how's it going? How you guys doing?
What's your name for YouTube, for the YouTube fans? What's your name?
Hey, I throw dollars at people just...
Hey, yeah, don't do that. I'm gonna put $1 in your thong.
That's hilarious. Whoa.
You know I was locked up a long time. Don't be shaking your ass in front of me.
So TJ is back in the Cook County jail temporarily on a magic mushroom possession charge of all things. And TJ Jimenez's idea to birth his own gang kingdom to the west side apparently grew out of a friendship forged at this time. In the county, TJ met a traveling vice lord from the 700 block of North Trumbull. And that led him to then meet Dantrell Williams, another traveling vice lord from that area. Dantrell Williams, now 21, got an R standing for the Royal and Simon City Royals tattooed on his neck. Young Dantrell had decided to flip from vice lord, supposedly after being paid $50K cash once TJ got his settlement, and became one of the original leaders of Jimenez's new gang, the No Love Money Gang, which I guess was a Simon City Royals set, and he was having vice lords in that old West Side neighborhood flip. Now, why that neighborhood? I heard an interview with the guy that said TJ, remember he had some kids, we had a baby's mother, but then he met this other girl that was from, there was a projects over there that got torn down.
See, they have plenty of room in here for the kids to play. But why isn't any kids out here?
It's too
The
dangerous.
reason why? Because it's too dangerous. This building here is the disciple building. But if you swing over this way, this is the vice lord building. So this room here is like a battlefield.
Some of those vice lords were moving into the neighborhoods, and I think these original kids, according to this guy, not kids, but young gang members, were the relatives of this girl. I don't know if these people in the county jail he met were, or he met them first and then he met the girl, but that's an interesting side note. But the west side of Chicago, as you get towards the city limits, has been one of America's most lucrative dope territories for decades. In fact, the I-290 Eisenhower West Freeway is nicknamed the Heroin Highway. But TJ wasn't interested in selling heroin on the west side like the traveling vice lords or their rivals, the conservative vice lords. Not according to the police, he was only interested in taking on the rival gangs. At this point, he had $13 million in clean cash. He got $25 million settlement. The lawyers got 12. He had $13 million at this point. He's out of the county jail. He's got $13 million. He's paid Dantrell to get the R on his neck. Very few drug dealers ever stacked $13 million, so you don't need to sell heroin. May 22nd, 2014, the 4100 block of West Chicago Avenue. A green Hummer is pulled over for being suspicious. It was driven by TJ Jimenez, and the passenger seats were stocked with black No Love Money Gang members. TJ often let the No Love Money Gang members drive his Hummer, nicknamed the Tank. And according to sources say reports of shots fired were often linked to that vehicle being in the neighborhood. One of these No Love Money Gang guys, he tried to make into a rapper.
We catch them with guns and talk. Fuck, you niggas ain't nothing like we. Stunning the level and robbing them chicks.
Doesn't sound any worse than anything else that was coming out at that time. Remember, that was right after Chief Keef. Who knows if TJ had put that money into having a rap label, but that's not what he wanted. He wanted revenge. And the police think the No Love Money gang first targeted the conservative vice lords for violence a few weeks after that police stop in the green Hummer on West Chicago Boulevard. It was July 3rd, 2014. Witnesses saw the green Hummer right before a shooting in a 600 block of North Ridgeway. A guy named Martin Satterfield, a former Marshall High School basketball player, was paralyzed. And he's 24, 25 maybe now, and he's still in a wheelchair, unfortunately. So that was the first crime attributed to the No Love Money gang, though I don't think anyone's ever been convicted of it, because no one was charged as of when I did the research. Now, Satterfield, whose family say he wasn't a gang member, he wouldn't cooperate with investigators, so maybe that's why there's been no conviction, but TJ's green Hummer was seen in the area. Now, before Satterfield was shot, the neighborhood was heavy on dope selling, but not that bad on violence, police records show, well, at least relative for Chicago. But after Satterfield was put in a wheelchair, the roughly 16-block area around there got lit up, figuratively and literally. By the end of October 2014, the traveling vice lords are fed up with the guys who had defected to the No Love Money gang, according to one knowledgeable source.
Dude did his hip, bro. Yeah, he ain't travel. We ain't going. Not much travel.